In the summer of 1483, a 12-year-old boy was about to be crowned King of England. He never made it to his coronation. Instead, he and his 9-year-old brother were led into a fortress on the banks of the Thames, and the world never saw them again. No bodies, no funeral, no confession. For almost 200 years, just 2 empty beds, a locked door, and a kingdom that quietly decided not to ask too many questions. This is the story of Edward V and Richard of Shrewsbury, the princes in the Tower, and the uncle who became king in their place. In April 1483, King Edward IV of England died suddenly at Fort. He left 2 sons, Edward, aged 12, now technically King Edward V, and Richard, his younger brother. Edward IV had been a strong, battle-hardened king who'd clawed his way to the throne during the Wars of the Roses, the brutal civil war between the houses of York and Lancaster. His sudden death left England with exactly what it dreaded: a child king and a power vacuum. By tradition, young Edward V needed a regent until he came of age. The obvious choice was his uncle, Richard, Duke of Gloucester, Edward IV's own brother, a trusted soldier with years of loyal service behind him. It should have been simple. It was anything but. Richard of Gloucester moved fast, faster than a man simply protecting his nephew should have needed to. He intercepted Edward V on the road to London and arrested the boy's maternal relatives, the Woodvilles, accusing them of plotting against him. Anthony Woodville, the boy king's uncle, was taken away and later executed without a proper trial. Edward V's mother, Queen Elizabeth Woodville, fled into sanctuary at Westminster Abbey with her younger children, including 9-year-old Richard. Eventually, under pressure and promises of safety, she handed young Richard over too. Both boys were lodged in the Tower of London. At the time, not sinister on its own, since the Tower was a royal residence as much as a prison, and tradition held that monarchs stayed there before their coronation. But the coronation kept getting delayed. Then, in June 1483, a clergyman named Ralph Shaw stood before a London crowd and claimed Edward IV's marriage to the boy's mother had been invalid, making both princes illegitimate and ineligible to inherit. 3 days later, Richard of Gloucester accepted the crown for himself. He became King Richard III. His nephews, the rightful king and his brother, were still inside the Tower. After the coronation, the record on the boys grows thin, and what little exists is chilling in its ordinariness. An Italian visitor named Dominic Mancini in London at the time wrote that the princes were moved into the Tower's inner apartments, and that fewer servants were allowed to attend them. He recorded the younger boy playing in the garden, sightings that grew rarer by the week. Then, sometime in the summer of 1483, the sightings stopped entirely. No announcement, no explanation, no bodies produced. They were simply gone. For a regime that had just seized the throne on a disputed claim, that silence was either remarkably careless or very deliberate. Rumors began almost immediately that the boys had been murdered on Richard's orders. By 1483, the French royal court was already openly stating the princes were dead, and foreign courts had little reason to lie about an English succession crisis they had no stake in. 2 years later, in 1485, Richard III was killed at the Battle of Bosworth Field by Henry Tudor, who took the throne as Henry VII. Henry had every incentive to blacken Richard's name, and did. Yet even he, controlling the narrative for decades, never staged a public investigation or announced finding the boys' remains. For a king trying to legitimize his own claim, that's a strange thing to leave hanging. Decades later, Tudor historian Thomas More wrote that the boys were smothered with pillows on Richard's orders and buried beneath a staircase in the Tower. The account is vivid and specific, and written decades later, under a regime hostile to Richard. Historians still debate how much is fact versus propaganda. Here's where it gets genuinely eerie. In 1674, workmen demolishing an old staircase in the Tower. They were declared to belong to 2 children of roughly the right ages, and on King Charles II's order, placed in an urn at Westminster Abbey, officially labelled the prince's remains. But the 1674 examination was crude by modern standards. No genetic testing, no rigorous dating, just 2 skeletons, found near where the old rumors said they'd be, declared to be the princes because the story already said they should be there. A 20th century re-examination was inconclusive on both age and identity. The Church of England has not permitted DNA testing since, testing that could likely settle the mystery for good. So today, with full access to that technology, we still officially do not know. Modern historians lean toward one of 3 explanations. 1. Richard III had them killed to secure his throne. The traditional view, backed by the timing matching his seizure of power exactly. 2. They were killed later, possibly on Henry VII's order, who had just as much motive to remove rival claimants. 3. A smaller group argues one or both boys survived, smuggled out and hidden, fueling years of pretender crises under Henry VII, including Perkin Warbeck, who spent years claiming to actually be the younger prince. No theory has ever been proven. Short of a Church of England exhumation that may never happen, none may ever be. What we're left with: two boys, aged 12 and 9, next in line, or already holding, the throne of England. Within months of their uncle's coronation, they vanished from recorded history entirely. No trial, no funeral, no grave anyone could point to with certainty for nearly 200 years. Whether Richard III was a calculating murderer or history's most convenient scapegoat, the Tower kept its secret well enough that 5 centuries later, we're still asking what every Londoner in 1483 must have whispered: where did the princes go? If you found this as unsettling as I did, subscribe for more forgotten fates of history's lost heirs, and tell me in the comments which royal mystery you want uncovered next.